Hello, welcome everybody. So it's great to be here today for this leadership conversation, specifically for undergraduate students and families. My name is Tommy Hessel. I am the current student body president, and I am joined today by Duke's president, Vincent Price, Duke's vice provost and vice president for student affairs, Gary Bennett, Mary Pat McMahon, our vice provost for undergraduate, our vice provost and vice president for student affairs, Mary Pat McMahon, and our vice provost for undergraduate education, Gary Bennett. Thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tommy.
It's great to be here.
Amazing. So as we start this off, we had a lot of questions that came in about what to expect for the spring semester. And what I thought we should do is look actually back at the fall and see what were the lessons that we learned from the fall experience. So President Price, when you look back at the fall, what worked?
Well, let me first say thank you, Tommy, for leading this conversation. And thank you to all the students and family members who are with us today. We're so very grateful for your commitment to Duke in this uncertain moment. Before we get started, and Tommy, before I get to your question, let's just take a brief moment to acknowledge our collective grief at the recent passing of 𝐀𝐻𝐿𝐻. 𝐀𝐻 was a member of the class of 2021 and was an extraordinary member of our Duke community. Her family is in our thoughts at this difficult time, and our student affairs team is standing by with resources for those students who are struggling with this loss. Let me turn to your question, Tommy, and start with a quick recap. Since our last leadership conversation, which was back before we started in August, in that time, we very successfully completed a fall semester thanks to the incredible efforts of a lot of people. Our faculty who stepped up to adapt in teaching in person under unusual circumstances with masking and social distancing. They stepped up to teach online. I'm proud to say we had no instances of classroom transmission. Our student affairs team, fabulous work by our housing and residential life team, the C team that worked closely with our students throughout, our COVID care team. We assembled a wonderful testing team across the campus, more than 15 testing sites up and running every week. Our health system employees and student health services employees who looked after us and provided that medical care. And then we had so many frontline workers in food services, housekeeping, and elsewhere across campus. And of course, our students, including many student leaders like you, Tommy, and your colleagues who helped us maintain our healthy behaviors through the whole semester. So what worked for us? One cornerstone was a robust testing protocol. As you know, we tested our students, faculty, and staff, all of them upon returning to campus. And we required ongoing surveillance testing of the entire campus community. We deployed our symptom monitoring app to clear people for accessing the campus. Another key ingredient to our success, and I personally would say the most critical, was our shared commitments to acting in accordance with the Duke Compact. And that meant masking on and off campus, keeping a safe social distance, especially while eating and socializing. We know that those are the most significant opportunities for this virus to spread. Keeping our workspaces sanitized and washing our hands. And it did work for us. When we dispersed for the holidays, we estimated, based on our testing, a very low prevalence of the virus, well under 0.5%. Now today, we're facing higher prevalence of the virus. We're prepared. And in general, we think that the spring will look a lot like the fall. We have a great testing program, and we've ramped up over the last semester. This past week, for example, we gathered close to 28,000 tests from students, faculty, and staff. But the number of positive cases this semester, and this is in line with what we had expected, is running higher than at this time last semester. Actually, it's about 5 times higher, mainly because we had so few cases in the fall. In absolute numbers, the cases are not alarming. This week, we saw 16 positives from gateway testing among students, from newly returning students. We saw 25 students test positive from our surveillance testing, and 21 students test positive who were contact traced or presented symptoms. And that's across a total student population of 16,000 students, graduate and undergraduate, on and off campus. It's not even 1% of the student body, but it is significant, and we know that this is a challenging virus. I just want to emphasize again, we cannot take Duke's success for granted. We can't take the fall success for granted. It takes combined effort from hundreds, if not thousands of people to carry out our teaching and our research and service missions during the pandemic, and working very closely with our neighbors and state and local government. So we did well, but we know that this just happened. It took serious concerted effort. And let me turn to you, Mary Pat, and ask you, what do you think contributed to things that worked well for us in the fall?
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Thanks, Tommy. And hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here and in this conversation. I'll say that as we thought about the ways we were going to start out in the fall, we actually made a pretty deliberate effort to engage students on the why side. I mean, if you look at how the buses were wrapped at the beginning of the academic year and the way they're wrapped right now, there's this message of your why. And, there's a couple, Gary's the behavioral psychologist in our partnership, but we both have worked for a long time and know that if you work with students in a community, having people feel like we're all a part of it together is a huge factor in adherence to our goals and to success. And so when, we started out, we send this conduct message out every 2 weeks. We're going to keep doing that this semester. People saw that, we had over 1,000 speak up line reports about students, not wearing their masks, or a group of students clustering, or people being in their room, or hosting an event. And in 90-something%, probably 94, 95% of the cases that we handled, the Do Well team, the residential life team, conduct, our student affair, our Dean of Students team, engaged students on the why question and took a health intervention approach, right? So when somebody had a moment, and I see people all the time, I haven't actually had a chance much this semester to ask people to put their masks up because people are really adhering right now. But anybody on our team, on the C team, would say, hey, can you get your mask on? And, with the idea of we're all in this together, we're all learning, we're all adapting. And we were really trying from the jump to set it up so that people felt like we're in this together. And we're thinking about the fact that it's not because it's an inconvenience to me to not be able to sit and eat with my friends the way I would normally do that. But it's so that not only my 18, 22, 24-year-old friends can stay safe, but it's so our housekeepers can stay safe, and our faculty can stay safe, and our community can keep going. There's, Vince, you know this, and I think this. I think there was this moment somewhere along the way where we started to build this sort of team momentum and understand that we were doing something special. I talked to a lot of students who were kind of like, we're getting there, we're doing it. The adherence right now on campus is incredible, right? There's an energy on campus, there's a we're in it together component to things on campus. So I think that was a big part of our start. And I'll just say too that working with DSG, I know Gary's going to say this as well, but working with our student government, working with student leaders, getting feedback, working with students in specific populations, leaders in different campus groups, it's really helped us sort of keep the conversation circle open and having the sort of, this is getting through, this is not getting through. People might need this message sort of turned up a little bit more. That's a partnership, and we're going to ask students to help us again in understanding what is, what's happening on campus, what's happening in people's lives, and how do we sort of solve this and continue to solve this together as best we can. We have to stay patient. We got a long way to go. Gary, I know you wanted to jump in.
Thanks, Mary Pat, and thanks, Tommy. I appreciate the new job, by the way. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I agree with everything that Mary Pat said, and I just want to also acknowledge the creativity of our faculty. Vince mentioned it, but our faculty colleagues have really been amazing during this entire year in many respects. And I just want to note that it is true that our faculty adapted quickly and well to a new delivery modality and a new set of experiences, but people were dealing with no small amount of complexity in their own homes. My wife is upstairs right now in a virtual funeral for a close colleague, and I know many colleagues who have experienced loss during the last year, who've experienced the challenge of trying to figure out how they were going to manage virtual instruction with the virtual teaching that was happening in the next door with their children. Incidentally, my kids may invade at any point. We have colleagues who are managing elderly loved ones. And so it's been all the more remarkable that so many people in our community have balanced their personal and their professional lives in ways that I think have just been really quite remarkable. And our faculty have been supported by a not small group of staff in places like the Office of Undergraduate Education. Across our 3 divisions, we've had many of our team members have supported faculty and our students directly. It's been a community effort in a really significant way. And as a Duke alum, it's been just absolutely beautiful to watch. And I'll second the point that Mary Pat made, that this generation of DSG is absolutely top notch. And you guys are really messing it up for the DSG folks to come behind you, because you're just doing a beautiful job working very, very closely, both with our student communities and with administration, holding us to account for things along the way. But where, we have a really strong partnership. And I think the success of the fall really demonstrates that. So thank you, Tommy, for all you're doing.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's for sure a team effort across the board.
Yeah, Tommy, we wanted to sort of turn the Q&A to you for a little bit, because you're sort of, you signed up to be the president of student government. Your team signed up to be on this team. Like the rest of us, you did not know that what you're signing up for was a 10 month term in a pandemic, right? It's been a Herculean effort, and I wanted to just sort of ask you to comment a little bit about where did you all innovate? What are you proud of? What do you think you need sort of from the student body and from families too? If families are on this call as well, yeah, give us a little inside baseball on sort of how what you think happened, and then what you need as we go forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. So obviously, as you alluded to, we started up in the summer. DSG, or Duke Student Government, usually does not do that. So it was a quick entry into the school year, but it was a welcome one, and we were really excited to get going because there were a lot of services that students needed, a lot of answers that I think students were clamoring for. So to speak to some of the specifics, we worked over the summer to create the Student Advisory Board, which was a big success for students figuring out kind of more of the information that was kind of going on as it was actually kind of decided upon. We also worked on the grading policies for both the fall and the spring. So you saw changes in the kind of like satisfactory, unsatisfactory course policies and making them more accommodating for students. Adding break days to our schedule for this semester has been massively important to kind of address the taboo of mental health is no longer taboo, which is exciting. People are willing to go to resources and willing to have break days throughout this spring. So that's been very encouraging to see. Additionally, Gary and Mary Pat, you both know well that we've worked with your offices to do campaigns for Halloween, keeping people safe then, allowing people to mask up and social distance, and fun little pictures of us kind of around the Instagrams. Designated tech resources for students. Y'all have been incredible with kind of that charge that we had, in addition to financial aid COVID appeals and making that process a lot more transparent for students across the board. What we need kind of right now and what we're looking for and kind of what DSG is kind of focusing on now is really just getting a lot more feedback from the community in order to keep traditions alive, the university experience alive throughout this spring semester and throughout this virtual crazy time. So traditions like midnight breakfast that we boosted to online, and even virtual 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐞, which I think we might get to a bit later. That was exciting, where students are actually taking the entire 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐞 experience and putting it online. So students are very innovative, and we will find ways to get past a lot of these challenges that we've seen. And again, it's a testament to all the students adhering to public guidelines. Parents, y'all have been amazing in allowing your students to kind of still partake in this university experience and still have, again, this amazing trust in the university for allowing your students to be in this space. So thank you all. And yeah. I can shift over gears to another question that's been on a lot of students' minds is many students feel like they have lost a year, especially in the fall and in the spring. We'll see. They've missed out on those traditional Duke experiences that we've alluded to earlier, both on and off campus. So how do you address that while we're still in a pandemic for Gary and Mary Pat?
Yeah, Tommy, I think, students feel it because it's true, right? And there's this interesting element where, we were open in the fall. We had students, but Gary and I had breakfast and tea and coffee with students who were joining us virtually from 12 13, 14 hours away. During reading period, we met with students who had been gone nocturnal and sort of joined campus remotely, completely remotely from all around the world and all around the country. So we know that some people are now also coming back to campus having done that, or remain sort of virtual or remote with us this semester. So, but number one, it's because there was something so different. And I think there's this funny element of kind of hitting the balance wheel on that, because it's, we're glad we're here. We're glad, we want to keep our goals going, but there's a lot of loss. We also spoke Sunday night with the incoming class of 2025 ED students who've lost their senior year of high school, all of it, and there's great loss in the world. My nephew didn't get to go to Cooperstown. He'd been planning for years to win NorCal and be the pitcher in the closing game at the Little League World Series. There's lots of ways that people are just sacrificing so many parts of their sort of lives. And Tommy, you picked up on something huge, and that's been a conversation we've had with DUU too, which is there's so much culture and sort of student leader driven culture at Duke, and sort of maintaining the, we don't want to sort of start and reinvent the wheel on things that keep this place really, really special. We won't, I feel confident that we've got sort of knowledge and leadership in a pride of place to pass it on, even if we try. It's like Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton's like, I tried to take it apart and I tried. We couldn't take it apart if we tried. Pandemic can try, but it won't. Duke student culture is going to be sort of robust. We're going to talk about this later about ways we actually think it can come out better. My 2:00 meeting this afternoon was with a newly formed student-facing community events group, right? So it's includes the Vice Provost of the Arts, John Brown. It includes David Pittman from UCAE, rec staff, lots of different community partners, campus partners. We would like to start, if we can, it's like an infinity loop of it has to be safe. We know we need it. It has to be safe. We know we need it, to do a few things that offer. We did a pilot program. We had the first year class reserve time to walk around the garden in small groups on the Duke Gardens. It was awesome. I had a great time. Gary had a great time. Landy had a great, a bunch of us enjoyed it. But the first year class got a chance to go be there. The academic guides have done some amazing stuff that way. We know that kind of giving people the opportunity to come together in a safe outdoors as much as possible. We're in North Carolina. I used to be in Maine. We're hoping to take advantage of the North Carolina factor here. But getting something going, helping people just connect. And I also want to just name that the sort of, there is going to be this feeling where first years, and I've talked to a bunch of sophomores, specifically second year students, who feel like it's their fourth semester here. They're supposed to have a little bit more of a groove and a plan and their people, and they may not, right? Typically it takes 2-3 semesters to find the people that you really do want to have be the ones that you really trust and talk to. And if you went through a pandemic at the end of your first year and you're now a second semester sophomore, you might not be there. And so putting yourself out there, connecting to people, taking a little bit more risk and vulnerability and connecting. Families at home, talking to students who say, it's my fourth semester here at Duke, I'm not sure I've found the person I really can talk to yet. That person is not alone, right? So I think knowing that, sort of knowing that we've been through something, and then thinking about how we dig in and sort of stay balanced in that respect. We'll have some events that help people with that, and then just that same advice that we always give of reach out, connect, talk to people is going to be big. There's a lot of questions around sort of some of our traditional OUE-led programs. So I know that Gary's going to comment too on sort of where, as we go forward, what things we can sort of resume.
Yeah, there are so many signature events, including kind of signature and signature programs, including signature academic programs. And I know folks are probably wondering about summer 2021, and I just want to note that we have a message that we're preparing for the student community. It should go out in the next day or two, but I can give you some of the highlights. And one of them is that we plan to be able to have in-person courses on campus here this summer for summer session 1 and summer session 2. And that includes having our students reside here on campus to take those in-person courses. So we're very excited about that. And I think summer last year was a remarkable opportunity for many students. We had many more classes than we've ever had before. And aside from just the good of being able to engage in coursework, I think it really helped us both with accessibility and affordability of Duke's curricular experiences during the summer. So that will happen again this year, although we'll have an in-person component. But we also plan to have in-person and remote co-curricular programs this summer. And for the first time in my memory, we'll be able to have students reside on campus here this summer as well, if they're participating in a co-curricular experience. They still will be subject to our usual behavioral expectations and our testing and surveillance procedures. But we're very excited about the possibility of this summer being an opportunity for us to have a campus that's enriched with the presence of our undergraduates, and also an opportunity for students to continue to deepen their relationships with one another and with their faculty.
Thank you so much for that. I know as a student who was here over the summer, it was just amazing to connect with new students and to have that beautiful summer at Duke experience. So that's really encouraging to hear. So switching gears a little bit and looking more towards this semester, big question again is to everyone here, what do the plans for vaccination and vaccinating undergraduates across campus look like? President Price?
Sure. Well, let me just say over the last month, we've been very effective in carrying out both the CDC and state guidelines to vaccinate healthcare workers who are most at risk of contracting COVID, including students and faculty who work in clinical settings and labs who are studying COVID-19. And Duke Health leads the state in vaccinations, even though we're not by any stretch the largest health system in the state. But we have been, we've opened a number of vaccination sites, and we've been working very hard to make that happen. We've also worked very hard to ensure equitable distribution of the vaccine to Durham and Wake County. Last week, we opened 7 new locations to administer the vaccine. This includes a special partnership with Durham County at Southern High. And our next step is to work with the state and with trusted community partners in opening mass vaccination sites. And we will be calling on all the people of Duke to contribute to that effort. It's very important. And we're providing clinical oversight and vaccine management and distribution, and we have hundreds of volunteers already activated. Now, it's important for people to understand Duke does not own any doses of the vaccine. We're the custodians of the doses that are supplied to us. And it's our responsibility to distribute those doses according to the state's priorities. It's not up to Duke, in other words, to determine who gets it or when. That being said, we're very confident that when the time comes for students to receive the vaccine, it will be administered efficiently and safely to the entire campus community. It's hard for us to project at this point. You've read the news, you know about bottlenecks at different points from vaccine production to distribution, but we're working on this. And anyone with questions or who has medical conditions should reach out for support. But it's hard, honestly, Tommy, to say at this point when we'll be administering vaccines to the bulk of our student population. It is, as you know, a 2-dose vaccine as well. So the timing toward the end of the semester could be awkward vis-a-vis administering what we know is a 2-dose regimen stretched over a month.
Vince, just to add, we understand from the North Carolina Consortium of Colleges and Universities, the private university college consortium, they gave us a briefing this morning that they don't expect for the state, as you said, we're custodians in the state, so the state is sort of guiding the process. We don't expect that there'll be an opportunity for undergraduates to get vaccinated as a general population this spring. We might have students who have underlying health conditions for whom they should, for whom their their needs might be different. Those students should contact student health. When it comes time, we anticipate that it's going to be something that the state pays for, as you said. But the sort of general expectation right now is that we should plan on a spring where there isn't vaccines for undergrads and for students. It's fluid. Kyle Kavanaugh keeps using the term. It's a fluid situation, but that's what we know today.
Amazing, thank you. And kind of building on that fluid situation, this next question kind of fills into a little bit more of vaccine dependent kind of questioning. But so for this semester, 2 events people are wondering about for sure are basketball and commencement, two kind of large events that make Duke. So will students and maybe seniors, that'd be exciting, be able to attend a basketball game in person? And what about commencement?
Well, I'll take those, Tommy. First, the commencement question. We're still considering options for commencement, and I can tell you our primary concern, it just has to be the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. Our strong preference would be to celebrate our graduates in person if possible. But we're not going to pursue that course if there's significant risk involved. And if we are able to safely offer an in-person event, it's going to be very limited in scope and attendance. So the likelihood that we could mount, the traditional kind of commencement at Wallace Wade Stadium is at this point unlikely. One of the most important factors will be whether we can gather safely in person. This depends upon vaccine rollouts in North Carolina, obviously. We expect to provide a firm answer about commencement by the end of February. We're waiting so that we have the most information at our disposal. I know people are trying to make plans, but before we issue firm plans, we really want to know exactly what we're able to do and what kinds of in-person components we can offer to our students. As to basketball, again, it's a similar answer. Health and safety of the student athletes is our #1 priority at this point, and I would say for the foreseeable future, until conditions of this pandemic change, we won't be having spectators in our competitions. And I grant you, this is hard, especially for those of us like you and me, Tommy, who just love attending Duke sporting events. It's especially hard in the case of basketball, given so many strong campus traditions that we share around the 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐸𝐲𝐷 and K-ville and the like. So I know firsthand how disappointing this is for our students, but believe me, it's disappointing for Coach K, for the team, for all of our student athletes who are competing this spring. But I also know, as was discussed earlier, that DSG is working closely with student affairs and with Duke Athletics, thinking about ways that we can show support for our teams. It won't be the same thing as tenting. You won't be like jumping up and down, covered with blue paint, in the stands at Cameron. But it is a part of the Duke experience this year, and I think we will be starting some new traditions. Mary Pat, Tommy, you yourself, you've mentioned some of the excitement around how some of those are playing out. So we've got to be smart about this. As Mary Pat said earlier, this pandemic has caused so many people to miss out on so many things. In our haste to recover normalcy, we just can't do anything that puts us in a bad position with respect to public health.
I wanted to mention the sort of work that the line monitors have done to create a virtual K-ville. They've rolled that out to the student community. I got a preview of it the other day. It's not during the game, it's before the game, it's at halftime. There's different things that you can do. But they have put, Gary and I toured K-ville with the headline monitors on the last night of tenting last spring, and it was a trip, and this is that same incredible energy going into sort of making it virtual. It's not gonna be the same, but it's actually pretty cool, and I think they're looking for students to sign up and sort of jump in. I think, Vince, we can do staff tents. There's talk of staff tents. I'm sure that people might not want that, but maybe they do. I don't know. But it's definitely, I've been so impressed with the sort of the line monitor team trying to put something meaningful, and they're thinking about that same thing that Tommy mentioned before, which is maintaining tradition and keeping that sort of energy going in a different format right now.
Yes, thank you so much. As much as we all love tenting, we know the public health guidelines definitely take precedence, because there are just so many diseases that can spread within those close quarters tents, as much as we love them. Okay, so next question on my list is, we know that Duke has taken a significant financial hit throughout this pandemic and overall economic downturn. So how will this financial kind of impact, how does that look at Duke, and will the university continue to meet demonstrated financial need? And what is the current kind of stance or ongoing policy for need-blind financial aid for future students as well, President Price?
Absolutely, and I'll let Gary and Mary Pat speak to this in more detail, but I want to emphasize we are absolutely committed to remaining a need-blind institution and meeting the demonstrated financial need of the students. So we're expanding, not contracting financial aid by trying to respond to special conditions because we recognize that the pandemic has impacted the financial circumstances of students and families, and we want to be responsive to those changing needs. I've discussed this with the trustees of the university. Our commitment is very strong to making sure that we don't, at a moment of financial pressure, alter our overall institutional priorities, and access to a Duke education is one of our very, very highest priorities. That entails having a robust financial aid program. So we're meeting our financial challenges by doing other things. We're cutting back on expenses. We've asked for a lot of sacrifices across the entire institution from faculty and staff and others. We're weathering this reasonably well. So financial aid throughout the pandemic is important, and will continue to be afterward. It will be one of our highest priorities going forward for fundraising. It already is, but we will double down on that need for financial aid, rest assured. Mary Pat, Gary, would you like to speak briefly to this as well?
Sure, and I'll just say that one of the things that gave me the most comfort at the beginning of this, at the beginning of all of this, and maybe even before we all left, I remember very clearly being in a meeting where Vince said clearly to his entire assembled leadership team that financial aid would, despite the oncoming economic crisis, would remain a key priority for this institution. And it was a great moment, and I'm pleased to say that I'm just so proud of our team and the way that they've weathered some of these challenges over the past year, because we know this has been a tremendously difficult time for so many of our students and their families, and continues to be. And for some, the end is not immediately in sight. So, our financial aid office this fall, I'll just note that it's, currently it's being brilliantly led by Miranda McMahon. She's done a beautiful job, and there was a COVID appeals process, actually, as you mentioned earlier, Tommy, and that resulted in providing increases in aid to 200 of our students whose families had some type of COVID-related hardship. So those are things like, losing a job or substantial loss of income, or other kinds of things like having increased medical costs resulting from chronic illness, or the need to take care of one's families who may have been impacted during all of this. And the office continues to support students very closely this semester as well. And I'll just note that they're doing this amidst also managing the kinds of the sort of financial needs for our newest Dukies, and that's no small feat every year. It's also been the case that, and I think one of the things that's gone really largely unheralded in this last year is the fact that we've had Dukies on campus for pretty much the entire year. The institution's made a commitment early on, and Mary Pat's team has just been instrumental in ensuring that students who had high need, who couldn't return home for one reason or another, had a place to go, a place to stay, and could continue to access our dining facilities and things like that. And we've been providing emergency aid. Nearly 100 of our students have received this to try to cover the cost of housing and meals and the like over our most recent winter break. So I've been proud of the response of the team. And again, as an alum, I always say I'm honored to do the job, but it's wonderful to sometimes be in the seat and see all that our colleagues are doing to take care of our students. I'll say that one of the biggest changes in Duke, I'm always telling folks, is that we have been enriched by the presence of students who are first generation in their family to attend college, or students from limited income backgrounds. That number now approaches 1 in 5 undergrads here at Duke, and they've enriched our campus in a wide variety of ways, but inside the classroom, outside the classroom. It's been a wonderful change in the complexion of our campus. And our Duke Life office, and note that we permanently borrowed the Duke Life name from the Duke Life student group, and that's first gen limited income experience. That office, Duke Life, has been really instrumental in providing, say, loaner laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots, and supporting our students who have a need during all of this. So that program, I just will note, it remains ongoing, and you can always request assistance, technical assistance, through the Keep Learning website. And we are in the midst, last thing I'll just say is I just want to quickly note that we are in the midst of and really entering the final stages of recruiting a new financial aid director here at Duke. And I've been really, really pleased that we've had two rock star students serving on that search committee, Anna Trejo and Sarah Kane, who are really helping us to think about how to recruit a leader who can help us to have a really top-notch financial aid program moving into the future.
That's amazing. Thank you, Gary and Mary Pat, both. Just the overall aid and the overall commitment to students is really, really comforting to see, even despite all that's going on around us. So envisioning a future, what would a post-pandemic look like for undergraduate students? I know we spent a lot of time talking about kind of the current situation, some of the stuff that's kind of been within our fall semester. But many are specifically worried about what our class is going to look like going forward, what our housing situation is going to look like going forward, selective living groups, Rush, and President Price. I know a lot of people have been worried about Duke's own progress in another pandemic, which is systematic racism, which we've seen across the United States as a whole. So with all these questions in mind for moving forward, how does Duke move forward? What does a post-pandemic Duke look like?
Well, I've been thinking about this impending snowstorm, and here in North Carolina, snowstorms are kind of a laughable thing, but nevertheless, I don't think snow days are going to look quite the same way they used to. I think we'll probably all assemble on Zoom, which will upset everyone, but I do think we'll see. I think hybrid courses are going to be an area where we'll continue to see some penetration of hybrid courses into the Duke experience. I think they'll look a little bit different and mostly be sort of situated to allow us to engage global learners or to bring in new voices or different perspectives in a more robust way. I'm just having a chat this morning, and I noted that we are, for so many of the events that we've been holding, we're just getting record attendance numbers, and we're seeing much less attrition from those events. And so I can imagine all types of possibilities for us really reaching beyond the campus walls moving into the future and to engage our broader collection of our stakeholders. And again, learners from all over the world. I'm particularly interested to see how this may strengthen our relationship with DKU in the years to come. It's also the case that Winter Breakaway was just a runaway success, and I'm so grateful to the students and faculty who pioneered that experience. It didn't even feel like they were trying something new. It went so beautifully. But it showed us that there may be more demand, I think, for these kinds of shorter, more modular, intensive academic explorations into areas of interest or opportunities to kind of skill up in a new and different area. And so we'll be thinking about that. We're thinking about ways to integrate that in a more robust fashion in the years to come. I'd say I noted already summer courses, which I just think were a remarkable addition to the Duke curricula, and in really having remote summer courses were just very, very special last year, and we'll see how that works moving forward. But the last thing I'll say is that I was a little worried at the outset that we would see a sort of a compromised faculty-student relationship as we all moved away from campus. DSG, my poor DSG folks will just they'll roll their eyes because I say all the time, like, what is essential about experience, the undergraduate experience, is really the connection between faculty and their students. That's where so much of the magic happens. And I was very concerned that we would see changes in that really foundational connection. I've been pleased to see, of course, that we have seen we've been impacted by the distance, but I'll tell you, things like virtual office hours have really taken off. Our vLearn program is setting record attendance. Duke Conversations, I did one a few weeks ago, was just spectacular. And again, I mentioned the event. So, there are some things that have happened in this virtual format that I think will stick with us and may present opportunities for us, even deepening connections between students, their faculty, and other campus stakeholders.
So the couple of things on the sort of, you touched on housing and living and learning at Rush and a few other pieces like that, Tommy. So normally we'd have our sort of, this is the housing plan for fall of 2021, information available. It had been posted in December. People start asking questions. The Rush process would start right now. We do have Rush right now for SLGs, including Greek orgs, for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and it has to be virtual. And I'm very hopeful / confident / need our Greek organizations to meet us on that, right? So MGCs, Multicultural Greek Organizations, and NPHC, National Panhellenic Council organizations, they can rush first years. Generally, they're much smaller process and their timelines are a little bit different, but the smaller number of students involved in the process, I should say. But the PanHell and IFC program they can rush right now. It has to be virtual for safety reasons. It has to be virtual. It has to be virtual. I'm hoping students are listening and saying, oh, that's right. It's going to only be virtual because it could take us down, right? So there's got to be a way that people work with us on that piece. But we do support that process going forward this spring in as safe a manner as possible. We are not having the first year class rush SLGs. Everybody knows this. We talked about this in multiple town halls in the fall. Because we want all first years to have a home on West as second year students, that is separate and apart from a selective group and going through a process where there's some that sort of get their wishes and others that do not, right? So that program, we're going to roll that out. We're going to have a timeline available around February 15th. For all students. We also, we typically have an on-campus housing requirement, 3-year requirement, 4th year, when we make room for everybody on the 4th year. If we can, we want to move back to that as quickly as possible. And so we need to figure out a couple of big questions around virus transmission and predicting where we're going to stand on August 15th. We don't want to give people, sort of a whole set of information and run a process and, with incomplete information. We're probably still going to have incomplete information in February when we do this, but we want to get closer to a better picture of what we can offer. The living and learning stuff, I'll just touch on it for a minute because, as far as this question of what does Duke look like on the other side, we have 3 subcommittees working right now. And they're doing amazing they're envisioning and building a sort of, how do we think about this? And you mentioned the racial justice calls this summer and our sort of other pandemic as a nation and on our Duke campus. We're thinking about what is an inclusive, really significantly, everybody has a belonging experience here at Duke look like? How does that, Gary's talking about faculty as the core, that faculty relationship is the core part of the undergraduate experience. That's got to be something that we draw from the first year all the way through somebody's graduation while they're here. And you mentioned traditions. You're talking a little bit about how we maintain our traditions. What do we reinvigorate and refresh? Our committee is tackling it. And it's actually fascinating to watch a whole bunch of Duke people who like to get things done sit and wrestle with a couple of the big things that they don't get done in a meeting, right? And so there's this sort of broad scope. How do we think about the framework and parameters to really define this? What's it going to take? What is the first phase of this going to look like? The living and learning group that Gary chaired before I got here, really gave a terrific blueprint. This new group is sort of taking the disruption of the pandemic, all the wheels and cycles that typically roll along and then make it sort of hard to sort of start putting a stake in the ground and make change. Those wheels are sort of in new and sort of distinct coordination right now. And so that actually gives the university and gives our student leaders, our alumni, our faculty partners a chance to really weigh in on what this could be. I appreciate people's patience because I know that there's students and families listening right now are saying, well, am I going to have a place to live on West next year? Like, this is what we need to know, people. And I know that's on people's list. We are cognizant of sort of the timelines that people will have to face if they're going off campus. We understand that those pieces are in play. So like I said, we're going to get information out there by February 15th. The housing selection process will mirror the other processes that come later in the spring. And we'll make sure that people get as much information as they can on that part. It's important to sort of restate that a big part of the Duke experience too is this residential living and learning community. We're going to enrich that right now, and so we want to as safely as we can have a through line and sort of a return to that full on-campus experience next year if we can.
And I would say one of our high priorities is fully activating what we call the global network, all of our Duke alumni around the globe, and pulling them into the educational enterprise for current students. All of you will be alumni, and we're already thinking about how we engage with you once you leave Duke. And we've been thinking about this for some years, how our alumni can be pulled into our activities on campus and how we can maintain those connections and support your growth and development throughout your lives. But our work over the past year has just accelerated all that because we've got virtual connections that we have leveraged to help with career planning and placement. So that's another sphere of activity, I think, where we'll see some lasting, I think, changes for the better that will pull into the Duke experience. But Tommy, you highlighted our work in combating systemic racism, and I've said over the past months, we are confronting dual pandemics. We have COVID-19, and we have the racial and social inequities that this virus is just exploited and exacerbated. So our commitments as an institution to dealing with systemic racism and advancing social equity, those are deep commitments. And I want to thank all of our faculty and staff and our students for the way that they've embraced this mission. Since my Juneteenth message over the summer, people have stepped up. We've seen numerous and very thoughtful anti-racism programs developed. I know discussions are taking place across the campus, in classrooms and outside of classrooms. My principal concern is that we not allow this to dissipate. This energy cannot be allowed to dissipate. This is not a standalone initiative. It's something that's incorporated into every aspect of what we do as an institution, including our health system. And so to that end, 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐞, who is our Vice President for Institutional Equity, is coordinating our efforts across Duke, and she's working very closely with Provost Sally Kornbluth. And just a couple of things that I would highlight at this point. Thanks to the work of Mary Pat and Gary and our students as well, we've introduced new anti-racism orientation programs, our Foundations of Equity conversations. We will this spring be rolling out comprehensive culture and climate surveys, including the first ever for staff, all staff at Duke. And we're thinking about how we can look for patterns across students, faculty, staff, thinking inclusively of the entire community. We have funds from the Duke Endowment to support a faculty group that's planning a university course. The Office of the Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement has run fabulous workshops dealing with classroom culture and trying to put tools in the hands of faculty so they can advance and develop a culture where every student feels that they belong. The Duke Endowment has also provided funds for faculty scholarship on race and racism. And we're mounting a major project on a history of the American South and Duke's institutional role in that history. And it's not just the academic units, it's all parts of the university. And so we'll be rolling out some new dashboards that help display data in ways that we hope units will find useful so they can monitor progress and be held accountable for that progress. So I invite all of you to follow our progress at antiracism.duke.edu. That's our website. This is an important and enduring goal for Duke.
That's amazing. I've been checking that website, and I was on a call the other day with actually PCOBA, a few members too, and we were talking about the self-discovery and just the part of the college process is just so big. It's self-discovery and finding out who you are, and to have something like systemic racism or to have barriers along your path, like kind of not allow you to reach that potential and to reach like kind of who you are and who you're going to be in the wider world is just a tragedy. And to Dr. Bennett, your point, as well as President Price, your point on DKU, I was on a call with them yesterday as well. And it was exciting to hear about their ideas on how to get kind of civically engaged and to connect our campuses. And it's amazing to see that despite us being virtual, it's actually an advantage in some cases where we can connect with them over Zoom and have these kinds of conversations and connect clubs. So it was another kind of exciting silver lining. So wrapping kind of all of this up into a big question is as we reflect on all of these changes to the core university experience that we've touched on, one thing that's been amazing to see from the students across the university is just how they've been able to respond to new communications and to stay resilient despite everything. So how is Duke planning on keeping up this communication and staying resilient despite the many challenges for this and coming years?
Tommy, this goes back to the question before about sort of what are we learning too, right? So we've adapted, we've adapted several of our practices. We've got people that are working in the communication, student-facing communications function. This number of people that are in redeployed roles in student affairs because, venue and performance. We don't have a lot of venue and performance right now, but we do have isolation care. So a lot of people in venue and performance are doing isolation care. A whole bunch of people are redeployed to student-facing communication for social media channels, for the OUE and student affairs newsletter, which goes out. It went out today. We see a consistent engagement from about 65% of the students who get that message. They open it every week. When we put the conduct numbers in, it goes up to 78 or 82%. Everybody wants to know what's happening on that side of things. We're going to keep those practices, right? We're going to sort of continue to sort of have a fairly predictable cadence of communications with students and a chance for people to sort of follow us. We're trying to meet students where they get their information a little bit more. I think that's part of resilience. There's another element to your question, which is how do we all keep going together, right? What happens next? I was walking into the Broadhead Center right at probably 1:02 this afternoon, and I think there was a bus that just brought a whole bunch of people over from east to west, and I was kind of going, and somebody held the door open for me, right? And there was somebody ahead of them that held the door open for them. I held the door open for the person behind me, and then that person, it got a little absurd because everybody was just a little too far. In a normal year, in a normal time, that the people wouldn't have waited that long. You would have been on your own, boom, you're in, you're out. But I'm noticing something particularly amazing about the student population right now. And people, nobody knew each other. Everybody was just holding doors. But there is this sort of culture that we need to build on right now, which is we're in this together. We see each other, and I think we've all gotten more used to sort of seeing each other while masked and sort of still seeing the human and not just the mask. And thinking about ways to sort of kind of continue that way and find connection points is going to be a big part of our resiliency. Staying connected. We need students to kind of keep paying attention, keep following, and sort of kind of continuing to build on that idea that we're doing something special here. It's important, it's urgent, it's long, it's taxing, it's hard, but we don't have control over when it ends. But we do have control over how we sort of handle it and keep that support going. We haven't touched a ton in this call or this forum on sort of well-being, but sort of I think people are also going to need to rest, do less, connect more, and sort of think about ways to, just understand that it's still the case that nobody is at their, no one is having their best year. Nobody, right? And so we can't expect each other to do that. And thinking about ways to sort of see and support each other in the place that we're in that's just going to continue to be urgent.
Yeah, outside of a pandemic, we're always saying lean in, slow down, and reach out. And particularly right now, I think, just as Mary Pat was saying, it's just absolutely critical. It's going to be critical for us all to get through this. I was listening earlier today to some stories about folks hitting the pandemic wall. And I know I've hit it a few times and keep hitting rewind or reverse and going and hitting it again. And I expect that many of us are that way. And the solution for us in the short term is to lean in, to slow down, and to reach out as much as we possibly can. I was on the phone earlier today with an alum who's been gone for some number of years, and he's down graduate school, and he was saying he's putting on a big program, and I was asking him how it was going, and he said, it's not like Duke, because Duke is just an inherently student-centered, student-focused place. And it's the one thing I really love. I think it's true, and I really love it about the Duke experience. And I just want to acknowledge again, we've done it a few times, but I don't think we can do it enough, that the work of students in general, students in leadership across the university, the students who are not in leadership, who will grab us as we're walking across the campus or send a note, and particularly the DSG who really have done so many things right this year in working with us. I mean, it's Tommy rattled off a list earlier: the academic calendar, the wellness days, SU policy, leave policies, all manner of things. And it is legitimately true. We have worked in very close collaboration with DSG along the way for those and so many other things. And so I really appreciate that. I do want to reinforce Mary Pat's point that we do want to hear from you. And so I hope you will continue to, our doors and email are open. And so please let us hear from you, because we don't always get it right. and we will make mistakes. And when we do, I think we are very comfortable with hearing that from students and acknowledging when we can, how we can try to work harder to make things a little bit better. So it is because of our students that we both do this work. It's part of, I think, our personal resilience strategies, and so I hope that we can continue to work in close collaboration, both as we get through this and as we get on to the next thing.
And I would say, just to echo this, this pandemic has been so difficult because it has deprived us of that sense of community that is such a big part of the Duke experience. But ironically, I don't know, this distance makes the heart grow fonder, or you don't really know what you've got till it's gone. But there's a sense that this community values that perhaps more now than ever in its history. It feels that way to me. And I'm so proud of the work that Mary Pat and Gary and their teams have done. I'm especially proud of the work that the students have done. In the fall, I would go downtown and people would just unsolicited tell me how much they appreciated what Duke students were doing. They could spot you all because you're wearing those blue masks that we issued. But they were proud of Duke. Members of the Durham community were singling out our students' behavior as a reason for almost community pride. And this was in the context, as you may recall, of a lot of news coverage and opinion pieces about how foolish it was to bring students back to campuses and how dangerous, frankly, it was. I think that this is a community that has been tested this year, but has grown all that much stronger. And so I feel great about, not about where we are right now. There are so many things wrong with the world, including this terrible virus, but about where a place like Duke can go, and the leadership position that we can maintain going forward. And I'm reminded that when we became Duke University, it was only a few short years after Trinity College fought its way through the 1918-1919 pandemic. We've actually seen this before in the arc of our own history. And that burst of energy that created Duke University, that literally launched this university, actually began in conditions that weren't all that different from what we're facing today. So we're going to celebrate that centennial just a few years out. And I think we're just so well positioned for the next 100 years. And for you as alums, when you finish up your studies, I think you can look back on this moment and point to the ways that you as students changed Duke, changes for the better. It didn't come to us the way we had expected, but it came to us, and it came to you as students and families, and I think you've demonstrated tremendous resilience. So we'll carry all of that forward with us.
Thank you all so much for being here today and taking part of this event. Gary, Mary Pat, Vincent, it's been a real pleasure to be able to ask these questions in this setting. And I know the entire administration, faculty, staff have been working just tirelessly since last year just to combat this virus and to put Duke into the best position it can be for now and, as you mentioned, President Price, for the next 100 years. So it really is the epitome of just this kind of the Duke difference that we always talk about so much. I really think it is just epitomized by everything we have today, and just showcases the strength of this Duke community. So really amazing. And thank you to everybody watching. Thank you for tuning in to this leadership conversation today. And this concludes the leadership conversation for the undergrads and parents. Thank you.